I think I'm not stating anything that's not obvious. It's leaving people really uncertain and gosh, wanting to have their wedding and make it wonderful and great. It is, it's all over the board. Some people are wanting to hold tight on executing the vision that they had originally and holding tight on dates. Certainly Chicago is considered a hotspot for COVID-19 right now. So they're holding out for their fall weddings. Some people are saying, you know, I'm just going to hold off and cancel for now and wait to see further recommendations from the CDC. And we're getting phone calls for new bookings. Some people are saying, hey, I hear we can have 50 people. I want to throw a 50-person wedding and I can't wait to get married. So it really is all over the board.
Great. Lauren?
Yeah, we're seeing the same thing, you know, with over 20,000 weddings happening every weekend in the US alone. It is so tough to have to make these decisions that are affecting so many couples right now. So at the Knot, we're really just trying to be a resource to meet you where you are in your journey, to help you navigate postponement or what a smaller celebration might look like, or help you plan for a celebration in the future. You know, as many people that already are planning, a lot of people are also getting engaged during this time. And with so much uncertainty around what weddings might look like, we're hoping to provide inspiration and guidance and even just a little empathy and support, because it is such a hard thing for couples who are faced with these big decisions.
Frida?
Yes, hi. Once again, I have to concur with my fellow panelists who have come on so far. What is interesting for us here in the Bahamas is that our main hoteliers, that being Atlantis and also Bahama, they have seen a number of cancellations, well, not really cancellations, so to speak, but more postponement. And you know, there are some couples who have even said, well, to Atlantis, because I've been in touch with them in the last week or so. And of course, Tatiana, I think we know Jenna Conway, who heads up the wedding department there. They are still encouraging people, even if they want to bring a smaller number of persons to be a part of the wedding. There has been much discussion, because I'm sure, like the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism and all the different organizations, you know, it's now, how do we do business online to keep the momentum going? So we're kind of webinar out almost, I have to say, but we know that is a very critical part of the business to keep us connected to these couples. And yes, of course, we do still have a number of inquiries coming in.
Carla?
Well, our case at Punta Cana Resort and Club, it's not much different from other places that are famous for destination weddings. But we are lucky that people want to stay with us for their celebration. Maybe a few couples, they would change the type of celebration they would like to have now before everything got crazy. But we're still very in contact with our clients because they want to keep the celebration with us. We are lucky that our resort, it's kind of big and wide. We have a lot of open spaces, so they feel safe to do our celebration, even though they have to change a few things. But we are all the time in contact, so we are lucky to still have our couples, and we are getting a lot of leads to next year, especially for the summer.
Mm-hmm. Great. Melissa? Melissa, are you with us?
I think something is going wrong with Melissa connection. So if you want to keep going, don't worry.
Okay, no problem. Michelle?
Yes, thank you. Pretty much the same. In Jamaica, our resorts are considered boutique-like, so it's easy for us to adjust to the social distancing. We're not a mega hotel. Mega hotels, our hotels range from 150 to 300 rooms, so it's very easy for us to adjust. However, we still have brides waiting with wedding dates in June and are contacting me daily. And we're hoping if the Jamaican government and the Minister of Health open the borders, we do plan to continue with these weddings, these girls' weddings with guests coming down over a year ago, and they want their wedding to be the wedding that they dreamed of. And we will work with them to complete their dream wedding.
And Anna?
Yes, well, right now in Bella's Resorts, we are working very hard, still receiving leads. That's a good sign, and just making sure to be ready to receive all of our grooms and brides. We are now working on general post-COVID hygiene protocols. It's a huge manual of how we're going to work since now. So everything is changing, as you know. That doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. Now we are going to have some just general policies regarding social distancing, the body temperature, the sanitizing in general. Then we are going to have, of course, the personal protection and how we are going to clean the rooms and just make sure that all the events are happening with the right measures now. And I think there's three ways that that the couples are being affected by this. And of course, the way we are having events now are different. So now we are changing, and of course the dates that they need to move. We are working as a hotel. We try to be very empathic and working hard to make their events possible, just like this exact same wedding of their dreams, just on a different date once the borders open. And just in general, to move people for a destination wedding to another country can get pretty interesting right now. The great benefit that they have with, if they book a wedding with us, they have a wedding coordinator. So she's in charge of the whole planning process. So I think that will give them peace of mind. We really want to give them peace of mind, and someone will be on site taking charge of everything.
Thank you so much. And so, and actually the next question relates a little bit to what you just said. And that's basically, what can couples expect to see in the next 6 to 12 months ahead with social distancing rules? What specific changes are you making? And we'll go back to you, Karen.
We certainly are, staying abreast of CDC guidelines as they are constantly changing. So for us, right now, a lot of it is word on the street, right? A lot of it is speculation about what we're going to be able to do. So we're fully anticipating having temperature checks on our staff as they're coming in, sanitizing and hand washing stations readily available, disinfecting and sanitizing surfaces throughout an entire event. We luckily have outdoor spaces available, so a lot of people are looking to host their entire event outdoor, whereas usually people are looking to have maybe an outdoor ceremony and then shift into an indoor dinner, but people are asking to have everything outdoors, which is a wonderful option. So we'll keep evolving, really, and doing what the CDC is asking, but also what our guests want and what they will make their guests feel better about being at an event.
Great. Lauren?
Yeah, I echo those sentiments 100%. It is really challenging because so much of the regulation is based on your government, on your state, on your city where you're getting married or where you live. And so I think it's really important to be thinking about your safety and the safety of your guests, and coming up with some creative ways to celebrate. So we've been talking about what we're dubbing the mini moni, which is a very quiet, small ceremony with the idea of a sequel wedding, which is essentially a postponed celebration with all of your family and friends at a later date. We've also talked about this idea of shift weddings potentially happening, where either you have one venue set up and you invite different guests to celebrate different portions of your event, which allows an event team to fully clean and sanitize in between you receiving your guests as an option. We've also talked about this rise of having a celebration, much in the way that couples are planning now of a weekend long of events, but doing it in such a way where, maybe some of your guests come to what would have been a rehearsal dinner and a different group of guests come to what would be your ceremony. So I think couples are going to have to get really creative, and they're going to have to do what feels right to them and what feels safe for their guests. But I think a lot of hand sanitizing and, no touch hand washing stations will be around. I think guest floor or dance floors will get a lot larger. And guests will be able to spread out in bigger tables across a ballroom, or like you said, an outdoor space. And I think we're also going to see a lot of contactless greetings. So instead of having that receiving line, maybe it looks a little different. We've talked about couples monogramming or using some sort of fun way to personalize face masks for their guests, and even gloves coming back. That was like a very fancy in vogue thing for special occasions. So maybe there's a way to bring those back as well, so people feel safe when they are celebrating a wedding. So lots of changes on the horizon, but lots of creativity and lots of personalization.
Great. And Frida?
Well, I would definitely say that, as we all know, in terms of destination weddings, 99% of our destination weddings are held on the beaches. And as you know, the Bahamas is known for some of the most amazing beaches, especially in this part of the world. So beach weddings where there are just so many spaces, open spaces, that definitely won't be a problem. I know that a good number of the wedding planners and also the hotels, they're just trying to see how they can encourage, going back to what I think Lauren said, is finding out exactly what is it the couple really envisage their special day being like. So we have to be guided by that. And of course, really by our Ministry of Health. For a small nation of some 350,000 people so far, and we've been very blessed, we only have 96 confirmed COVID cases, about 45 of those recovered. So the restrictions are really being adhered to. We've been on lockdown since the third weekend in March, and a curfew, and only going out for essential items. Of course, essential workers like the policemen and, all of those type of persons, they go out freely but with masks. But getting back to the types of weddings, we have yet to confirm with some of the couples, at least the ones who have not, because like I said, there are a good number of them who have postponed. But most properties, according to their data, what they've said to us, they have been able to secure at least 40 to 50% of the business. The majority of them postponing until the spring of next year. So those dates are filling up really quickly. Open spaces, that's what it'll be. In terms of masks or what have you, we will still have to wait to see how this whole thing evolves and whether or not there will be a vaccine, what have you. So, I really can't say exactly what those spaces will look like, whether or not there will be masks, we'll enforce masks, what have you. So it's kind of a wait and see for us, really.
Thank you. Michelle?
Thank you. So basically what we're working right now at the resorts, remember we are a hotel that also specializes in destination weddings and honeymoons. So we have two things going on here. But one of the things is our new motto, Good, Clean, Fun. And that's what the staff is currently doing right now, waiting for our guests to arrive. And things such as staff training, prevention tactics such as hand washing, increased availability of antibacterial sanitizers, enhanced cleaning, disinfection of guest rooms with hospital grade cleaning solutions, increased frequency of public spaces, deep cleaning of all the kitchen and spa areas, enhanced cleaning, sanitizing of all tabletops after every use, cleaning and sanitation of airport shuttles prior to and after the guests arrive. What we're going to do is we're going to screen our arriving guests with handheld thermometers at the airport and plus entering the resort. We're going to adhere to the Minister of Tourism guidelines on restaurants and assign detection teams. We're going to have physicians and nurses right there on staff, and we're going to introduce contactless check-in for the guests. So what we want them to do is pre-check in with their credit card so they can bypass the check-in area and everything's already in their room. So we're working around the clock to assist the guests with the new arrivals.
Thank you. Carla?
Well, in our case, it's kind of a long way because we own the airport. The Punta Cana International Airport is from the company. So our protocols comes since the moment you get down off the airplane. So as soon as you get at the resort, you also will have other protocols that everybody mentioned before because it's almost the same from everyone. And so when they arrive to the hotel, they will receive another kind of welcome. So different cases, for example, the elevators, we're gonna just use them for people that really needs them. Our buildings are not too high, so you can walk with no problem at all. Obviously, mask, sanitizing. Our restaurants, the separation between table and table will be much longer. We will recommend smaller celebrations until we evolve with this new system. So I think it's almost the same from everyone. And also, on the other hand, we will have, we're having already like a big education program at Punta Cana Resort and Club. All the managers are working twice a week with the new protocol. So when we get back with our staff team, we're gonna do it like phases so we can train everybody as they deserve and get the education they need too. Because we're gonna start a new, it's like you are going to a new job again. So we are working with all the staff in the company. We feel very pleased that this new process, it's going very well. So we are just, I mean, we just want to open and get everybody back to Punta Cana Resort and Club, and all the brides and grooms, they can get now finally their new date. That we are also very flexible with that, but basically we are doing we're all have the same interest, so we are working. And also we have other partners like Marriott International, leading hotels of the world, Virtuoso, so we get a lot of great information that we can merge with our company protocols.
Great. And Anna?
Yes, thank you. Well, regarding banquets, which is the area that covers weddings, we are very lucky and we work with the best of the best. Our company named Cristal. Cristal is an international certification. I think it is actually European, and it provides very strict standards for us to follow in order to get the certified by them when it comes to food safety. So they come to our properties every month, and it's crazy because nobody knows when they will arrive. So they just arrive and check all of our kitchens, all of our stuff, restaurants, etc. And they have now a new section for post-COVID standards. So they have very strict standards, and I'm going to share with you some of them that I thought were really very interesting. Definitely, we are having sanitization stations near to every event. That's for sure. That needs to happen. Now we will have different setups just to make sure to have the distance, the social distance, that it's safe. Maybe tables, instead of tables of 10, now we are going to have tables of 5 or 6. And buffets. Buffets are definitely changing. Something that got me really excited is that now we will have individual portions. So before this, you just grab an amount of food and you serve it to your plate, right? And we waste so much food, that's a fact. And now you will have the individual portion that you can just grab and take to your table. So not everyone is manipulating the food, just you in your individual plate. And of course, if you are hungry, then you can just repeat. But now you have this individual portion. And if you choose the opposite, for example, some brides, they choose a set menu, sorry. So we are having now the QR codes, so you can scan your menu. That's Amazing. That's a future. Yes. So you don't need to touch it. Nobody will touch it either. I mean, the waiter, you just scan it and you can see it in your phone. And as I remember Lauren was mentioning, just adapting the mask and gloves to be just fashionable. Maybe not gloves on a beach wedding because of the heat, but it's definitely a trend. And yes, that's something that I'm seeing right now.
Great. And so I'm going to combine the next two questions so we can get to, we're seeing a lot of questions come in, so I want to get to our bride questions. And you guys touched upon this a little bit, so that's why I'm going to combine it. What trends are you currently seeing? And also, what percentage of couples are postponing weeks, months versus years? So are you seeing the majority of weddings postponing to the fall? Are they postponing to next year? And also, what are the trends that you're seeing? And I know you touched upon some of them. And so if you care to touch upon that again, if you have something additional to add, or we can get to our bride's questions after. So we'll start with Karen from RPM.
So it's changed quite a bit. I think for the initial couples in March, let's say, they felt a sense of urgency and wanting to pick a new day and thinking that this was going to be just a temporary hiccup. And I think they really picked dates that were maybe 6 months away from their current scheduled wedding, right? So we had a lot of March and April couples picking September and October dates for their ceremony. And I think once people really had a little bit more time to kind of sit and plan, that they're seeing couples move dates 12 to 18 months out. So our initial couples were very much of the mindset of like, whatever will be, we'll adjust and we'll get married and we're looking forward to it. And as we move closer and closer to the summer dates and as more information is coming available, people are saying, I really don't want to pick a fall date. I hear there's going to be a resurgence. And some people are saying, I have a destination wedding planned and I want to go forward with it, even if it's a smaller group. So it's really starting to evolve. And change in people's, some people are wanting to move 18 months out and have the 200-person wedding that they were planning. And some people are saying, you know what, we're just going to go with 25 to 50 of our closest, nearest, and dearest, and we're going to do it now.
Great, thank you. Lauren?
Yeah, so I have a couple of stats I can share with you. We did a survey of all of our couples who were scheduled to get married between April and August of this year. We found that only 7% were canceling their weddings, but that 93% were actually postponing their wedding, or they weren't making any changes, much like Karen was just saying. A lot of people didn't know, right? Okay, we have an April wedding, what's it going to look like in a couple of months? But what we are seeing is that 52% of couples who are rescheduling are delaying to later this year, and 33% are delaying to 2021. So it's going to look different for everyone. I think a really good thinking around this is what kind of wedding did you have planned and what might you be happy with? So in the instance, if you had a 200+ person wedding, maybe cutting it down to a handful of people works for you, maybe it doesn't. So maybe you push your date out further. We've seen couples come to us and say, we're a little bit older, we want to start a family, we want to buy a house, we want to get on with it, So they've just been having their ceremony with plans for a sequel wedding after the fact, when things clear up and it feels safe to resume to celebrating. In terms of the trends, I did mention a couple of them. One of the things I didn't mention that I think will change, we talked about buffets and food, but I also think that the idea around entertainment will change a little bit. You'll have that spaced seating for your ceremony and for your reception as well, but I think there still will be dance floors. I think they'll be larger and less people will be on them at a time, but I also think there's going to be a lot of entertainment that allows guests to sit in their seats and experience it. So musical performances, maybe dance performances. I think there's also going to be a lot of stations. Nowadays a lot of weddings will have a photo booth or a cool flair bartender or things to kind of disperse the guests and keep them entertained. I think we're going to see more of that coming about as we try and distance safely within an event space is another big trend.
Thank you. Frida?
Yes, well, like I alluded to earlier, according to our hotels here in the Bahamas, they have seen a great percentage of postponements, not really pure cancellation. So as I mentioned earlier, from March around the 21st, we were on total, all our borders were closed. So April, May, June really is our busiest season, even though we know that destination weddings, well, the bridal market it's not seasonal because we have certain percentages throughout the entire year. But I would say, I would be on the safe side to say about 50 to 60% of the weddings that are booked, they have postponed until next year. Hence the, the popular months getting filled up very quickly.
Great, thank you. Carla?
Well, in our case, we have two types of wedding: local weddings and the local weddings. They just wanna get married as fast as they have the permission from the government to do it. For other weddings, the people has to travel to the resort. Much of them are waiting for the airports to open, because if they can have their families here at the wedding, because they are investing some money in a celebration, it will be very difficult to do it this year if they don't have people coming to the wedding. So depending on the airports, dates, I mean, we can arrange the dates they want. So, and our percentage is about cancellation, very low. They wanna keep going with the wedding plans no matter what. In my case, I got engaged this year and I wanted to marry this year. So all my plans are moving to next year because my family lives all around the world. So I prefer to move it a little bit so I can have a small celebration, but I want all my family. So we're lucky to stay with our clients and they want to do it as soon as possible. We're lucky to have
So congratulations on your engagement.
Yes.
Thank you. We are lucky to have local weddings, very big local weddings. And thanks God, we have a lot of open spaces to give them a solution.
Great. Michelle?
There we go. Yeah, our booking trend seems to be pretty much the same. Normally it's 6 to 8 weeks for just a regular booking for just a honeymoon couple. Your destination weddings tend to be 6 or 8 months in advance. We did have a lot of weddings on the book for March and April and May. And we did offer them to postpone the weddings to the fall, okay? And if they choose to cancel, we did offer them a full refund. So that's what we're suggesting to the brides, is that go ahead and postpone it. You don't have to worry, we will give you all your money. Some are postponing to the fall and some are postponing till 2021, where we have some wonderful sales that they can do as well. Again, we are couples only, so it's real easy to distance because, you know, it's 2 people. With our destination weddings, as far as the space, they're usually set apart on maybe another side of the property where they're away from the rest of the guests, so that's not a problem. So that's what's going on so far.
And Anna?
Yes, I think at the beginning, everyone was very positive about the situation and just postponed to fall for us. And I'm very happy to hear that for everyone else was very similar. More than the 90% of our weddings were postponed, no cancel. And at the beginning, the new favorite was September, October, November to get married. Now we are seeing more and more postponements for next year. Beginning of 2021. And well, we are just adapting our policies to be empathic and to help to just make this process smoother for our brides.
Thank you so much. So we have received a number of questions from our brides, so we're going to get right to it and try to answer as many of them as we can. So I'll start with this one. So my fiance is working the COVID unit and I'm out of a job. We cannot commit to our original contract of how many people we would guarantee to our venue. How do we go about this? How about Karen?
Sure. I mean, I think the overriding sentiment of everyone on this call is every vendor I've worked with is being incredibly empathetic, and just talk to whomever you're working with to plan your event. Again, we are certainly, you know, when we have a food and beverage minimum for someone that's been set and they want to hold their wedding this year with only 50 people, not their original 200. I mean, it would be foolish of me to try and keep everything as is. So we certainly are flexing and adjusting accordingly. So I would just call your vendors and see what they can do. And I know people that also don't want their, you know, if they're only going to have 50 people, their band might have originally been 10 or 12 pieces, and they don't want that to cut into their guest count. So I would chat with your vendors and see where you have some wiggle room there.
Great. So what are our options? Should we decide to postpone our wedding? And is there anything to look out for in the coming months that may alter weddings as we know them, like fashion masks, wedding resources, etc.? Lauren? You're on mute.
Sorry. I mentioned a few of the things earlier that I think people are going to be implementing, you know, from hand sanitizer to maybe even, you know, color-coded masks that match the decor of a wedding. You know, I think it really depends on the kind of celebration you're having. What I do think is really fun is weddings have been largely personalized for the last 10 years. I think we're going to see an uptick in personalization as couples get creative and find new ways to bring themselves. I think there's also going to be a lot of virtual streaming. You know, even as we start to return to a new normal, there may be people who don't feel comfortable traveling, even if you are having a domestic wedding, or older relatives who feel like they're too at risk to travel. So I think we'll see some streaming ceremonies. I think we're going to see a lot of people want to involve their friends and family after being in quarantine for so long. I think we're all looking for and craving that connection. So it might be people participating in a wedding with a reading or a toast or something like that, but I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up. And in terms of resources, you know, we have a COVID-19 page on the knot.com. We're updating it every day as new information becomes available, but I think the CDC and the World Health Organization are your best resources, and checking with your local state government to see what is allowed and what isn't allowed with regards to number of people, and when you can celebrate safely.
Thank you. So we have one bride that wrote, our wedding is April 2021. However, my fear is the second wave of COVID they mention, as it seems venues are not refunding. Should we hold off making any further deposits on the space until late fall or early winter when we know more? The initial deposit is paid and the date secured. Anna?
Okay, thank you. So we don't know what will happen, but it's all about the policies and contract and what you that you sign and how flexible your venue is getting with this situation. So in our case, I just recommend you to reach at your main contact. In our situation, for example, our wedding coordinators, what we are doing is just to guarantee the change of dates without any penalties. So if this happens, hopefully not, but if this happens, we will just reschedule and with no extra charge for that. And I think everyone is being very empathic and very flexible. So just reach your main contact and I'm sure they will find a way to help you with that. Thank you for asking.
So we have another question. I booked my wedding on a Saturday night and paid a premium price. And the only other Saturday that's available is going to be in 2022. If I book on a Thursday or a Wednesday, would I be getting a better rate? How about Carla?
Well, in our case, it all depends. I mean, we are very flexible. We don't have like a special rate because of the day you picked. But as Kira said before, call your wedding coordinator, call the resort. I mean, we are open to any negotiation to get your wedding done. So we don't have a problem. I mean, if we have to fix a rate, we are very, I mean, everything possible to get the wedding done, we will do it.
And so what would venues and vendors be writing in a clause for a pandemic now? such to reference that if a wedding needs to be canceled or rescheduled. Anna?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure. Would venues and vendors now be adding a clause for a pandemic now?
Yes. Well, actually, it was already there in the terms and conditions. Now we are, of course, adapting and evolving, as we just mentioned. What I can tell you now is that we have, for example, we have a list of preferred vendors, and I was in contact with them, and everyone is doing a new protocol guide. So yes, definitely take a look on that, because they need to have like a PDF or a document where you can read these new policies or new things that they are doing, and just make sure to just inform yourself of how they are going to manage these changes and these new policies. But yes, it was already there. The contingency policy, it's always a possibility. Now, well, this was a surprise, but yes, it was always there. Thank you.
So another question, I'm concerned about whether to push to 2022 and if it is safe for a 2021 wedding. Frida?
Well, gosh, Tatiana, that's okay. So I think I have to agree with most of the panelists. First and foremost, we have to see what the Ministry of Health says, whether or not COVID-19, the coronavirus, to make sure there are no mutations. You know, as long as the borders are open, and in our case, we really won't know this until our Prime Minister says, okay, the borders are open. We're hoping that it would be open in July, but that is only guaranteed once all of the, once they take all the precautionary care to make sure of the sanitizers in the hotels. Because now just be mindful that I work for the Bahamas Ministry of Tourism, and we work very closely with all of our hotels. Of course, it also goes back to, yes, we'd love to have the business, but we have to be realistic here. And, you know, it's about managing expectations. Like I said earlier, we do still have a number of persons, new inquiries who are coming in for 2021 and also 2022. But no one can really say until this is properly behind us. Because I think, I don't know if it was Anna who said there might even be a resurgent, God forbid. But until this is clearly behind us and there's a vaccine, you know, that's really a tough one. But I would just hope from where we stand with the hoteliers that we've been talking to, once you have booked, let's say if it's next year or the year after, that there is something in the clause that would free you up, or so you wouldn't be restricted to, you know, a force majeure, because I believe now with these types of viruses, that would come into the actual contract. I hope that kind of clarifies. It was a long way around it, but as you could imagine, we just really have to wait for this to totally clear. And I you know, we'd like to be optimistic, but we have to be realist at the same time.
Another question came in. What about ordering the save the dates and invitations with everything going on? How should I go about this? That's a question for you, Lauren.
Sure. So I think the most important thing to remember is some of the typical wedding rules still apply. So we always recommend to send a save the date about 6 months ahead of your event, and a wedding invitation around 6 to 8 weeks out, largely dependent on when you need your RSVPs back for your caterer. The one thing I might suggest is making sure you have a wedding website. That's a great way for you to give guests information in real time, as these things are changing so frequently. A lot of companies too are offering change the date cards. So if you've already sent out your invitations, or even if you've already sent out a save the date and they're now postponing your wedding, companies like Minted, Artifact Uprising, if you've purchased things through them, they're even giving discounts. They too, like all other wedding vendors, are really empathetic and feeling for these couples. So check that out. A change the date is a great way for you to get in touch with your guests. And then having an FAQ page on your wedding website is super helpful for fielding all the questions that you know your guests will have about when are you going to do it? Is it safe for me to travel? How do I get there? All the same things that you would have for a normal wedding, but just a little more of that Q&A so guests can feel really well informed.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to chime in on that a little bit. And I think that if you're concerned, just do a digital invitation, a digital to save the date. Don't print anything until you know for certain. That way you don't have to incur any costs, unnecessary costs right now when things are uncertain. So another question came in. Will reception venues use disposables, flatware, and tableware? And why don't we ask you, Michelle, since you guys have thought through very specifically how you're going to handle this.
Well, actually, we don't know as of yet with the regular venue. With the most of the brides, once they're married, and if they have a large group, then they do like the private settings and the private weddings. I really can't answer that right now, but we are looking into the paper and the plastic. However, that's against everything we pretty much stand for because we're very environmentally friendly at our resorts. We have no plastic straws, no plastic. We have his and her cups. We don't have bottled water. So this is kind of going against the grain of what we stand for as far as using plastic. However, this is still on the board and we're waiting to hear back from our executive staff on that type of things for us.
Great. That's a good question. Will vendors I book now go out of business? Who wants to take that one?
You know what? I'm just going to jump in on
Sure.
this one, even though I work for a hotel and not necessarily a vendor. Insurance is very important. Now,
Yeah.
I'm far away from the wedding planning, the hotels and things like that, the venues. However, insurance is very important when you book and to use a travel agent and wedding coordinator. I find out now that travel insurance did not cover pandemic. It did not cover it. However, if they had the cancel for any reason insurance, they were covered. Okay, so that's just my 2 cents from the resort point of view. We know now, like we thought we knew with 9/11, that we thought in the travel industry we knew everything. We thought we had everything covered, and unfortunately we didn't. So there's other things that we're going to have to add. And I don't know, you bridal people, is there insurance to cover these type things? Whereas it's you can cover it for a destination wedding when you're actually traveling to go.
I'm not aware of any, but is anybody aware
No,
of insurance that covers?
No, and I'm not. Frida here once again, but what I would say, and just to give an example, we like to push the Bahamas Bridal Association, who are the only governing body of professional wedding planners. Maybe this is a time, until we can see our way clearer, it's best to go via a hotel. Where you can actually work this out. We do have now, sadly, we do have probably about 75% of wedding planners, even though they also do corporate events, whose business is just so much on hold. And they are very, very blessed to have another source of income. So with those types of independent wedding planners, yes, they can be cushioned so your funds wouldn't be lost. But my recommendation, honestly, at this particular point, perhaps you you book via a hotel who has a wedding planning services. That would be my advice at this particular point.
Great. Thank you so much. Does anyone else care to share on this subject? My personal take as a planner on this is that if you're concerned about that, and it's a very legitimate concern because it's a difficult time for everybody, and a lot of the industry is comprised of small to medium-sized businesses, and they're going to have a hard time. And so I would say put something in the contract before you sign to ask for refunds, but also you don't have to potentially give a large deposit, or you can potentially make your first payment a little bit later, let's say 3 months from now. So you sign the contract and you say, but can I do the first payment in 3 months, and so on. So I think there are ways for you to negotiate with these potential vendors because nobody really knows what's going to happen in 3 to 6 months. And if it's a smaller size company, there is a real possibility that they might be out of business next year. And you do want to protect yourself.
And another thing, wouldn't you be covered under your credit card? Depending on that, if the venue went out of business, right? Couldn't you just charge back your credit card? American Express, Discover, would that be covered that way?
I think it depends on the terms of the contract that you sign with the vendor. If they say there's no refund, then Amex will, will always look at the contract that's provided. And so that depends on whatever terms are agreed upon. So that's something for sure that a bride could, ask to put in the agreements and say, I would like to pay you by credit card. And if you're not in business, the problem is most vendors do not take credit cards. The small to medium sized companies don't take credit cards. They usually, but Lauren, I think you have experience in this as well. Would you care to share?
Sure. I think it's most important to think about your contract, especially if you haven't signed anything yet and you're looking to plan. And if you are looking to revisit the terms of your contract, I think it's most important that you talk with your vendors directly. At the end of the day, they're all people too. And a lot of them are running small businesses and have the same concerns about the virus, their safety, maybe their kids are out of school, they're without childcare. We're all in this together, so to speak. That is the one unique situation about this versus like a hurricane or something else. Most wedding insurance isn't going to get down to the nitty-gritty details around pandemics or a novel virus like this. So I think it's really important that you are very clear on your contract, what's expected of you, what's expected of the vendor in turn. In terms of people going out of business, all of this is very unknown. I would want to sit down with my vendor and discuss a payment plan like you suggested, Tatiana, where you can maybe put down a smaller deposit and then pay as you get closer to the date. Maybe there's a clause in there about if you have to postpone again during a second wave of infection. Some of the things that you are thinking about, just talk to your vendors about them. There's a really good chance that they will want to work those things into your contract. If you do have a wedding planner, that's a great place to start. They can be a real advocate for you. Oftentimes they've worked with these vendors time and time again, and they can help advocate on your benefit for, whatever the terms might be that you're looking to do. So, I would suggest talking to your vendors full well knowing that everybody does it a little differently. If you can pay with a credit card, that's a good option. Just make sure you're really clear on that fine print. It's tedious and tiresome to read, but it will protect you in the end. So do the reading or have a friend, a relative, anybody else who might have any kind of experience with contracts, look it over too, just so that you feel really good about signing.
Great. And so another question just came in. For a wedding of 175 people, if restrictions are only going to allow 50 people, are we able to cancel and be entitled to our deposit because of not meeting the original contract requirements? Does anybody want to take that? How about you, Karen?
Sure. Obviously, read your contract. This is different for everyone. Certainly for a lot of us, a contract isn't your guaranteed guest count. It is that you're securing a space and a date. So I would imagine that your venue is very much able to accommodate a smaller group and adjust accordingly. So I don't know that you necessarily would be able to get out of a contract just simply because your guest count has changed. However, force majeure would allow you with COVID-19 to change a date or adjust or unfortunately cancel if necessary. But it wouldn't necessarily fall under a guest count change.
And I'd like to chime in on that. So if you sign a contract and you give a guarantee for a certain amount of people and you're not able to cancel, but you're also not going to have that many people, I think that you can also work with the venue to add certain additional elements to your wedding so that you can, because what you're really committing to is the financial bit of it. It's not so much the 170 people, it's what that number is to the venue. So let's say for argument's sake, that's $20,000. You're committing to $20,000 more so than you're committing to 170 people. So perhaps the venue can work with you on adding, a brunch and maybe adding some spa services, maybe adding transportation for guests, maybe having a rehearsal dinner, maybe adding some rooms. But there are other ways to use that money, assuming that the hotel will work with you and the venue will work with you. But what we've noticed is most of the venues are very flexible and they're willing to work with you. So I would definitely have that discussion. We have another question that has come in. For a New York wedding in September, when should I decide if I should cancel or not? Does anybody want to take that?
I can take it.
Thank you, Lauren.
Sure. So, we have a lot of information on our website. I think the most important thing to think about is the safety of yourself and the safety of your guests. If you're getting married in New York, it happens to be, my home and a hot spot right now for the virus. And I think that there's a lot of concern about people traveling to New York City or traveling away from New York City. And so, just keep that in mind when you're thinking about your guests and who may or may not want to attend. I would say as soon as you feel comfortable, and you're going to have to kind of go with your gut here, postpone your celebration and let your guests know. Most people are going to be able to recoup things like travel expenses from, airfare and things like that. But some hotels have cancellation policies. More than anything, in this time of real uncertainty, I feel like people like to know when decisions have been made. So if you are able to let your guests know, hey, listen, we were really hoping for September, but we just don't feel like it's the right choice for us right now. So we're going to postpone for now. Or if you want to still try and plan ahead, just have that plan B in place around maybe a smaller guest list, or, doing kind of what we're dubbing a mini moni, where you are really just saying those vows with 10 or 15 people. And then think about a sequel, because I do think that asking a bunch of people to travel to New York in September, there's a fair bit of risk. It really depends on what your risk tolerance is. But traveling there and celebrating there when it's been such a hot spot for this virus, I think is going to give pause to a lot of your friends and family.
And I'm just going to chime in on that. I think that's great advice. And as a planner, my personal opinion, and it's just my opinion, is, better err on the side of caution. And if you can postpone without penalty and you've already communicated with all of your vendors, my recommendation would be to postpone, because you also have to think about other things, like how's it going to work on the dance floor? How's it going to work with food service? How's it going to work with the bartender grabbing you a drink? And are you going to require everybody to have masks? And then if you have masks, it's really difficult to eat. And how are you going to seat everybody? You're not going to have one table for every couple. And so there are all these different logistical things that you need to think about. And so if you're able to postpone, then you've put so much heart and so much soul and passion into planning this wedding. Why not have it be exactly the way you envisioned it, and just postpone it? But that's just my personal feeling. Now, I think we're out of time, unfortunately, for questions. And I just wanted to thank all of our panelists. You've done such an amazing job, and we're seeing feedback coming in for our brides saying how insightful this is and how amazing and useful this information was to them. And so I really appreciate you all taking the time. And I want to thank our brides for listening today. And we're going to be doing more of these, and we'll be communicating with our wedding community to let everybody know. And I want to thank everybody for joining. Thank you so much.